70%. Like 70% of digital transformations are actually failing to meet their objectives right now.
Which is, I mean, it's just a staggering number when you really look at it.
It really is. And, with the Australian government projecting a shortfall of over 300,000 tech workers by 2030, you simply cannot just hire your way out of a stalled project anymore.
No, you really can't. The talent pool just isn't there.
So welcome to C9 followers of Podcast and Business Page. We're so glad you're tuning in. I'm Lex, and I'm Vera from the C9 Podcast Show.
It is absolutely fantastic to be here today.
And today's deep dive is built entirely for you, the Australian business owners and C-level executives who are, trying to navigate this incredibly unforgiving terrain.
Yeah, because we are looking at a very specific, really high-stakes scenario today.
Right. Picture this. You have a software delivery team. You've approved the budget. The agile roadmaps are completely set.
But for some reason, the critical deliverables, like the ones the board is actually waiting for, they just aren't shipping. They're completely stalled.
And we have all been in that room, right? The tension is just palpable. So our mission for this deep dive is to give you a definitive blueprint for making an effective decision when that stall happens.
Exactly. And we're going to examine this blueprint through a 5-part framework.
Which is, first, classifying the problem, then defining it, specifying the right answer, deciding exactly when to pull the trigger, and finally, carrying out that decision without blowing up your existing team's workflow.
Right, and we really need to start with that first step, how we classify the problem, because the source data reveals this massive, very expensive trap that executives fall into.
Oh, absolutely. When a software project stalls, the immediate executive reflex is usually to classify it as a team performance issue.
Yep. You look at the burn down chart, you see tickets rolling over from sprint to sprint, and your natural assumption is just, it's an effort gap.
And actually, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Because if I'm a C-level executive and I have fully funded this delivery team.
Right. You've given them all the resources.
Exactly. We have Scrum Masters. We're doing the daily stand-ups. We're following the Agile playbook to the absolute letter. And yet, that data analytic dashboard I was promised still isn't live after 3 consecutive sprints. My gut tells me I have an underperforming or maybe just a poorly managed team on my hands. Why isn't that just a classic performance failure?
Because modern software delivery has fundamentally changed, and the root cause is almost always structural, not behavioral.
Structural, like the makeup of the capability.
Yes, exactly. There's a report, the PMI's Pulse of the Profession report, and it found that 10 cents of every single dollar is wasted due to poor project performance.
10 cents? That doesn't sound like a lot until you scale it up.
Right, because that's roughly $122 million vaporized for every $1 billion invested.
Oh, wow. That is a massive leak.
It is. And the Standish Group's CAOS report actually backs this up. They show that only about 29% of software projects are fully successful.
Wait, only 29%, so less than a third.
Less than a third. But when you dig into the mechanics of why they fail, McKinsey's analysis points to a highly specific culprit, which is missing specialized skills.
Okay, so you're saying my team isn't failing because they aren't working hard enough.
Exactly. They are stalling because they've hit a highly specific technical wall that their generalist skills just cannot scale.
Right. Think about what we ask a standard full-stack developer to do today.
Oh, it's wild. We want them to build the user interface, manage the database, ensure cloud security, write the API integrations.
Right, basically do everything.
Right. But when they suddenly have to say, architect a complex data pipeline that handles millions of real-time transactions, that requires a completely different, highly specialized paradigm.
So pushing a generalist to just, work harder on a specialist problem, that's what you mean by a structural delivery model failure.
Precisely. Which means we've naturally moved into the next phase of making an effective decision, which is defining exactly what piece of the structure is missing.
Okay, so once you stop blaming the team's work ethic, you can look objectively at the gap.
Yeah. The root cause of the stall is really just the absence of the right specialist expertise at the exact moment it's needed.
We're talking about deep, narrow requirements here. Things like navigating an APRA, CPS 234 cybersecurity compliance mandate.
Or architecting an API integration to meet the DTA digital service standard.
Let's actually talk about those mandates for a second, because that is where I see teams grind to an absolute halt. APRA CPS 234 isn't just some compliance checkbox you can Google your way through.
No, absolutely not.
It requires cryptographic proof of data security, strict access controls, InfoSec architecture. Like a brilliant generalist developer who builds amazing customer-facing features They simply haven't been trained to architect military-grade audit trails.
Right. And because they don't know how to architect it, they do the only thing they really can do.
Which is?
They delay it. They just push it to the next sprint. And this is where executives face two traditional yet completely flawed responses. The first one is deferring the task.
Oh, right. Just telling the team to focus on the easy stuff and figure the hard stuff out later.
Exactly, which is like putting a bucket under a highly specialized plumbing leak.
Right, which is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
But the second response, the recruitment trap, I mean, that might actually be worse.
Yeah, walk me through that one.
So you realize you need a specialist, right? So you open a requisition for a permanent full-time senior cloud architect. Let's look at the reality of the Australian market right now.
It's tight.
It's extremely tight. We're sitting at about 950,000 tech workers, and the Department of Industry, Science, and Resources says we need 1.2 million by 2030.
Which means the talent pool is effectively drained.
Right. So you're trying to hire this highly coveted specialist. It's going to take 90 to 120 days to find them, interview them, negotiate their inflated salary, and get them onboarded.
That's 3 to 4 months where your sprint is just completely blocked.
Exactly. To me, it feels a lot like managing a high-performance Formula One pit crew.
Oh, I like that. How do you mean?
Well, if a highly specialized sensor on the F1 car breaks mid-race, you don't, post a job ad for a full-time sensor mechanic, wait 3 months to hire them, and just let the car sit in the pit lane.
No, obviously not.
And you also don't ask the guy who changes the front left tire to just figure out the complex telemetry on the fly.
Right.
You need a specialist to drop in, fix that exact component in 2.5 seconds, and get the car back on the track. You don't need to put that specialist on your permanent payroll to sit in the office all year.
You just need their targeted expertise for that specific moment of crisis. That's a phenomenal way to look at it because the cost of leaving that car in the pit lane, the cost of delay is astronomical.
Oh, it really is.
McKinsey's data shows that each additional year a project runs increases cost overruns by 15%.
Wow.
Yeah, leading to an average of 45% cost overruns for large IT projects.
Yeah.
You literally cannot afford to wait 120 days to hire someone permanently for a temporary bottleneck.
And our sources actually provided a highly revealing real-world scenario of this exact cost in the Australian financial sector.
Oh, right, the regulatory dashboard one.
Exactly. So a delivery team was building this regulatory reporting dashboard. They identified a highly specific APRA data governance requirement in Sprint 3. But because they lacked that specialist knowledge, they just kept kicking the can down the road.
They chose to defer. They kept the car in the pit lane, hoping the tire changer would eventually figure out the telemetry.
Precisely. And the consequences were severe. By Sprint 11, which was just 2 weeks before a massive board-level demonstration, the technical debt came due.
They couldn't ignore the compliance mandate anymore.
No, they couldn't. And the result was 14 days of absolute crisis resolution. I mean, they had to pull in the CTO, get external legal reviews, run a completely derailed emergency architecture sprint.
And didn't the whole board demonstration get delayed?
By 6 weeks.
Wow. And here's the mechanism behind why that is so frustrating. If they had just engaged a specialist with APRA data governance depth back in Sprint 3, it would have been architected correctly in 4 to 6 working days?
Instead, they compounded the cost, burned out their generalist team, and totally derailed their strategic timeline.
So if hiring a permanent employee takes way too long and doing nothing leads to a 6-week board-level disaster, what does the actual middle ground look like?
Right, because we've classified the structural failure and we've defined the specialist gap. Now we need to specify the answer.
And the answer the industry is pivoting toward right now is the Disciplined Agile Specialist, or DA Specialist.
VA specialist.
Yeah, the PMI report actually noted a 57% increase in the adoption of hybrid agile approaches, precisely because organizations are demanding this kind of flexible, precision-based expertise.
But we really need to define exactly what this role is, because I know as an executive, when I hear the word specialist or consultant, my defenses immediately go up.
Oh, of course they do.
I picture a big management consulting firm coming in, spending 3 weeks interviewing my staff, dropping a massive 70-page PDF report on my desk, sending a 6-figure invoice, and then just leaving my team to figure out how to actually write the code.
Yeah, that's the traditional consultancy model. And you're completely right to be defensive about that because it doesn't actually unblock the sprint.
Not at all.
A DA specialist is fundamentally different. It's deep, narrow expertise brought in to resolve a tightly scoped problem by actually doing the work.
So they're not just dropping a report.
No, they are writing the data pipeline. And they are not a permanent staff augmentation resource that creates this ongoing dependency. They come in, solve the bottleneck, transfer their knowledge directly to your permanent staff, and then they exit cleanly.
It's basically surgical intervention.
Yeah.
So where does this approach actually yield the highest commercial leverage for an Australian delivery team?
Well, the sources highlight 4 massive high-impact areas where generalist teams traditionally stall. And the first one is data analytic dashboards. The statistic here is wild. Building the data architecture correctly from the start yields a 127% ROI within 3 years, according to Data Stack Hub.
Because if you don't build the architecture correctly, what happens?
Well, the dashboard works perfectly fine when you test it with 10 users. But the second you deploy it to the whole company, the queries take 4 minutes to load, the system times out, absolutely nobody uses it.
Right, you need a data engineering specialist to design that underlying pipeline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the second area is API and systems integration. We mentioned the DTA Digital Service Standard earlier. Meeting those government interoperability and accessibility mandates is incredibly rigorous.
Yeah, it's not just about making 2 systems talk to each other. It's about making them talk securely at scale while maintaining all those strict compliance protocols.
Spot on. Which ties directly into the third area, regulatory and compliance. Whether it's TGA health requirements where you have to perfectly segregate patient data or the APRA cybersecurity mandates, you need someone who knows the exact cryptographic standards required, not someone who's just guessing.
And the fourth high-impact area.
Technical debt resolution.
Oh, that's a big one.
It is. This happens when your build pipelines are degrading or your queries are slowing down because of, 100 tiny compromised decisions made under pressure over the last 2 years.
Death by 1,000 cuts.
Exactly. A DA specialist in performance engineering can come in, refactor that specific foundation, and get out, all without derailing your team's current feature development.
This all sounds like a highly effective answer. But, having the right answer is really only part of the executive burden.
True.
The hardest part is deciding when it is right to deploy it. Timing is ultimately a commercial decision.
It really is.
As a C-level executive, I'm not in Jira every day. I'm not attending the morning stand-ups. I don't see the day-to-day friction. So what are the undeniable flashing red lights that tell me I need to make this decision today?
That is the million-dollar question. Executives really need diagnostic signals that penetrate through all the noise of standard Agile reporting. And the sources outline 5 very clear signals.
I would imagine timeline anxiety is a massive one. Like if I have a major strategic release or a board presentation coming up and my lead developer is suddenly looking really nervous in our weekly catch-ups, I'm panicking.
That is absolutely one of the most critical signals. If a major release is less than 6 weeks away and you have an unresolved capability gap, you are officially out of runway.
6 weeks is the cutoff.
Pretty much. 6 weeks is the minimum viable window for a DA specialist to actually integrate, fix the architecture, test it, and have a meaningful impact before launch.
Okay.
If you are inside that window, every single day you wait increases the probability of a catastrophic launch failure.
So proximity to a hard deadline is a major signal. What are the others?
A huge one is when a critical backlog item has been blocked or deprioritized for 2 or more sprints, and the team cannot give you a credible technical resolution path.
Yes. The classic, we're looking into it update that happens 3 weeks in a row.
Exactly. If they keep kicking the can down the road, it is not a scheduling issue. It is a structural capability gap. They literally do not know how to build it, and they're just hoping they'll have a breakthrough.
And I imagine this overlaps heavily with compliance requirements.
It does, which is actually the third signal. A compliance or regulatory requirement that the team admits they will just work out later.
Oh, I hate that phrase.
Especially in the Australian market. With state-based data privacy laws and federal mandates, working it out later is exactly how that financial services team ended up with a 14-day crisis.
Because you can't bolt security or compliance onto a finished architecture. It has to be foundational.
Right. It's like trying to pour the concrete foundation of a house after you've already built the roof. It's impossible.
What about the performance side? You mentioned dashboards earlier.
That is signal 4. If your team is building highly complex data analytic dashboards, but you have no dedicated data architecture oversight.
So if your team is comprised entirely of front-end developers who are brilliant at making things look beautiful, but you have no one managing the database schemas or the ingestion pipelines.
You are actively building technical debt. Those dashboards will absolutely crash in production.
And the final signal.
It's the most deceptive one, actually. Delivery velocity has plateaued or even declined despite the team working at absolute full capacity.
Oh, man. That is the one that really tricks executives. Because you look at the team, and everyone is working overtime. They're stressed. They're putting in maximum effort. So you assume they just need more time.
But effort doesn't solve a structural constraint. If they are working harder but shipping less, they're spending all their time fighting a foundational architecture problem they just don't know how to solve.
So more overtime will just lead to burnout. Targeted specialist support is what actually unblocks the flow.
It's exactly.
Okay, so let's track the blueprint so far. We see the flashing red light. Let's say our velocity is flatlined.
Right.
We classify the problem correctly.
Yeah.
It's not our team's work ethic. It's a structural capability ceiling.
Right.
Then we define the gap. We need specialized data architecture. We specify the answer. A disciplined agile specialist. Which brings us to the final and arguably most important step, carrying out the decision.
Yes.
How does an executive actually execute this without creating massive organizational drag or completely disrupting the team's current momentum?
Well, to understand the execution, we really need to look at a brilliant case study from the source material involving an Australian logistics enterprise.
Okay, let's dive into that.
They were building a fleet operations data analytic dashboard. The goal was real-time visibility into vehicle utilization, predictive maintenance, and dynamic routing.
So a massive digital transformation piece.
Huge. And the delivery team was highly competent. They had strong API skills, great front-end capabilities. By Sprint 5, they actually had a working prototype that stakeholders loved.
But I'm guessing there was a catch regarding scale.
A massive catch. The prototype was built and tested on a data set of 10,000 records. But the production environment, which needed to track the actual national fleet in real time, was going to generate 2.4 million records every single day.
Right. And jumping from 10,000 records to 2.4 million isn't just about turning the dial up. The underlying mechanism of how the database handles that information has to change completely.
Exactly. The generalist team had built the prototype using standard batch processing, where the system tries to load a huge chunk of data all at once.
Which works fine for 10,000 records.
But if you try to batch process 2.4 million records, the database locks up, the dashboard freezes, and the system effectively dies.
Oh, no.
They needed event-driven streaming ingestion, where data is processed continuously as it arrives. But no one on the team had ever architected a streaming pipeline at that scale. They hit the capability ceiling.
So how do they carry out the decision to unblock it?
They brought in a C9DA specialist who focused entirely on data pipeline architecture, and they did it for exactly 2 sprints.
Just 4 weeks to fundamentally rebuild the data ingestion model.
Yeah, because the specialist isn't learning on the job. They've solved this exact problem 50 times before.
Oh, that makes sense.
In Sprint 1, the specialist audited the existing design, mapped out the failure points, and sat virtually side by side with the team's senior developer to implement the streaming ingestion pattern.
And Sprint 2.
In Sprint 2, they oversaw the load testing, optimized the complex queries so they would run in milliseconds, and delivered comprehensive documentation.
And the dashboard survived the 2.4 million records.
Flawlessly. It launched on schedule without a single timeout. But the truly critical outcome of carrying out the decision this way is what happened after those 2 sprints.
What happened?
Well, because the specialist worked directly with the permanent team, the senior developers actually learned how to manage streaming ingestion. When the DA specialist left, the permanent team retained the knowledge to maintain and scale the architecture independently.
See, that is the ultimate commercial leverage. And it perfectly highlights how C9 specifically delivers this capability for the Australian market. Because when you're an executive trying to execute this, the logistics are everything.
Absolutely.
First and foremost, C9DA specialists are available in days, not months. You completely bypass that 90 to 120-day recruitment trap. You get the F1 pit crew exactly when the car pulls in.
And that speed to deployment is what saves your timeline. But the second factor is how they integrate.
Right, because the biggest fear executives have is organizational drag, having to change all their internal processes to accommodate an external consultant.
But C9DA specialists map to your existing sprint ceremonies. They attend your stand-ups, they work in your JIRA boards, they follow your repository rules, they adapt to your agile rhythm, not the other way around.
So you incur zero change management costs. And I really want to emphasize the 2 biggest promises of the C9 model based on this blueprint. With 100% knowledge transfer by the end of the engagement and absolutely zero ongoing permanent dependencies. You are
Leaders should think about resourcing. You're solving the immediate bottleneck to save your current release, yes, but you are simultaneously structurally improving your delivery team's future velocity. You are raising their capability ceiling.
Which brings us to the end of our blueprint, and honestly to a really provocative thought. I want you, the listener, to mull over as you look at your own stalled projects.
Let's hear.
We started this deep dive talking about the terrifying reality of failing digital transformations and the massive tech talent shortage in Australia. But the most valuable asset a DA specialist leaves behind is not actually the code they wrote to unblock your current sprint.
What is it then?
It is the permanent upgrade in your own team's capability to solve the next complex problem entirely without them. It is about building internal resilience in a market where external talent is scarce.
Because the structural gap isn't going to magically fix itself just because your team works a few weekends. The delay is just compounding your risk.
Exactly. So I want you to ask yourself a very direct question. How much is your current wait-and-see approach actually costing your upcoming major release?
It's a tough question, but a necessary one.
If you are just deferring the hard architecture, hoping a generalist will eventually figure out enterprise-grade compliance while cost overruns compound by 15% a year, well, you are making an active, expensive choice to absorb that failure. Your next sprint simply cannot afford to wait. It is time to take definitive action.
And taking action is easier than you think. You can map out your exact structural bottleneck right now.
You absolutely can. We strongly encourage you to book a free, no-obligation 20-minute discovery call to figure out exactly how to unblock your specific team.
Where should they go?
You can do that by connecting with C9, who we are incredibly proud to say is Australia's leading custom software, apps, integration, and database developer company.
They have the specific DA specialists ready to integrate into your next sprint.
Head straight over to www.c9.com.au, and specifically, you want to visit c9.com.au software development partner to get started within days, not months.
Don't let your project stall any longer.
And before you jump into your next executive meeting, please remember to click that follow button on our page. If you know another business owner, a fellow C-suite executive, or a product manager who is currently pulling their hair out over a stalled delivery team, share this deep dive with them.
Yes, definitely share it. Navigating this Australian tech talent shortage takes a village, and it takes a really solid, tested blueprint.
It has been a fantastic conversation today. Keep interrogating your delivery models, and keep asking the hard questions about your team's structure.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Until next time, keep optimizing, keep learning, and remember, don't let a temporary specialist gap become a permanent failure for your digital transformation. See you next time.